Studio 5 graphics. And one of the things I want to talk about is using Amberlight, which is a really neat little program for bringing in more fantasy elements into your pictures. So this is a picture I did. The wings are imposed using Photoshop. The Amberlight overlay is done in Photoshop. A lot of the work is done in Photoshop, including the gradients and the colors and everything else, painting our eyes in dark. But the idea is to kind of bring about a special way of making your fantasy photography a little bit more interesting as far as people are concerned. So one of the things you can do, start off with a clean Amberlight slate. You can change the view size of what you've got cooking by using the screen size. You can change how many fields you want to have, whether you just want to do a random placement, whether you want to clear it. You can also render directly from it. You can do all sorts of different things with it. Your base, you can change it over from how much of the colors you want to see in your gradient, how they'll peak, how bright and soft they'll be. You can also change over its limits in terms of how the colors are going to work. I tend to want to work with more of a wider background to preserve the colors of the file I'm working with. And then opacity. Again, this graininess is going to get into the picture, and I don't necessarily want this, so I have a tendency of trying to go for more broad strokes. You can tint your file the way you want to tint it. You can also do a glow to kind of give it a little bit more of a dramatic effect by changing around its strengths, by changing around the radius of the glow itself. So you can go ahead and definitely play with this to kind of give you a better feel for what you want to do with it. You can also do a straight color. You can do a straight gradient. Most of us will tend to work in gradients. So this one's purple. You can choose a green gradient. If you want to change it over, you can choose more of a fiery, orangey gradient. So you can choose whatever gradient you want to work with that's going to mesh better with the image that you've got, that you're basically working with. You can also do straight black and white if you want to. You can do more of a red-black kind of gradient. The cool part about this is that generally this is what you'll see, but what you can do is you can drag these things around so you can get more of what you're looking for from your effects and process behind how you want to process all your post effects. And you can basically see what's going on, and don't be afraid to drag them off screen if you want something a little bit more dramatic. You do want to try to line your lines up if you've got things going on that you want to try to preserve. But you can basically drag and see where you're going to go with your image and then go ahead and let it finish doing its thing. So if you wanted something really flowery and really pretty, you could do something like this. You could also drag it off if you wanted to have more of a neutral kind of thing on it. You can also resize your circles if you want to have something smaller so you can get more of a process with it where everything is lining up nicely, you know, kind of maybe a sun effect like we have here with different gradients. You can also drag and make your circles bigger, make them smaller. You can basically really do whatever you want to do with this in terms of how things go. If you're done rendering, if you're happy with, like, say, that image, you can stop rendering or start it. You can change how many times it will render or draw its circles or draw its pixel patterns. So you can literally stop it at a certain point if you want minimal. If you want large ones, you can also clear whatever you've got cooking and it will just restart. You can also choose random. So if you just kind of like, oh, I want whatever the computer wants, you can go from there and kind of get some neat effects from it, and it will try to do something especially different with it. Again, I tend to use the white background because I want the specific colors preserved in the imagery that I'm doing. And then once you've kind of got it done, it will go ahead and keep on stepping through whatever it is you're doing. When you're done, you can go ahead and click render off if you're happy with your image. You can muck about with the opacity and colors, maybe bring it out a little bit more so you've got it. You can choose your blending modes, either to lighten, to darken, right? It just all depends on what you need, or just the normal blending mode. If you go ahead and you change it over to whatever you want, you can automatically, once you've got it set to where you're happy, you can choose whatever gradient. You can also just go ahead and do a raw color if you want to do a raw color. Most people will go with the gradients just because it's a little bit sweeter, a little bit nicer. Then when you're done, you can go File, Save As. You know, want to save as an Amberlight file. I tend to save everything as a PNG just because they're easier for me to deal with when I'm pulling things into Photoshop or Lightroom. You can also do all the things that you would want to do here, including help, seeing canvas size. The thing about canvas size, we're going to go ahead and save this off because it's going to want to change things around. You can change the canvas size around to suit what you need to do. You can keep aspect ratio, scale the fields, change the image size. We'll undo the buffer. So if we want to head, if our image is 2000, 2000 by 1125. We keep our aspect ratio, scale fields, then we go okay, and then we'll go ahead and we'll redo everything that it needs to do for the job, and you can go ahead and remuck about with this as much as you feel like to get that effect that you're looking for. So you can also superimpose pixels on top of pixels if you want to try to get a specific thing. So like this little heart shape, you know, to kind of drag it off a little bit. But again, it's that whole process of whatever you want to do, whatever suits your imagery. It's fun to kind of drag and drop things around to kind of suit you've got picking, so you can kind of get a heart with an arrow effect through it. If you like it, if you like where you're going with it, and it's early on in the process, go ahead and click off on render. And again, don't feel afraid to drag these things around to try to get whatever it is you want to get. So full color, but if we go over to a gradient, we can kind of get a little bit different feel of the whole process on what we're doing. And again, some of the stuff you may want to clean up in terms of Photoshop, especially with what you're designing and what you're doing and how you feel about what you want to make to suit your picture. But that's essentially how to use Amberlight within your picture, and this is the rendering of whatever you want to do. There's other ways of going about the process, whether it's through Photoshop or On One or all those other things, but it's still kind of neat to see all the things that you can do with Amberlight and trying to get more of a fantasy feel to your imagery and the things that you want to do. This is generally the hardest part of doing something in fantasy, other than, you know, trying to glue wings on somebody in Photoshop and trying to get all the gradients to move out and smooth out and everything else. This is just kind of a little bit of icing on the cake. It's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed our video, and I hope you come back for more.